Hello my fellow gamers, GamerDude back once again with some more informative gaming news. But before we begin, y'all know the routine, or at least I hope you do by now. If you are new to the channel, please make sure you smash that like button and drop me a subscribe because it would just be your good deed of the day. Same applies if you are a returning viewer. Now then, as you can tell from the title, we are going to be discussing the Last of Us franchise and how it appears that The Last of Us 3 could be upon us sooner rather than later. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down everything I've found, discussing it, and just going over general quotes and whatnot that I've found regarding this. So then, assuming that The Last of Us Part 3 could be the end, assuming it's even the end, what could a third installment actually look like? Who will we be playing as? And where will it be centered? So, the big question y'all are probably asking me right now is The Last of Us 3 really happening? Another survival horror sequel following The Last of Us 2 seems like it is definitely on the cards. After a seemingly reliable leaker took to Twitter to share the good news, stating that Ellie's journey would continue on the PS5 in the years ahead. Now, they can't be talking about The Last of Us Part 1 because that's been done, that was out. This article that I am getting my information from is recent, it's less than a week old. So moving forward, Twitter user Viewer Anon claims that developer Naughty Dog is already working on The Last of Us Part 3. A rumour I'm actually inclined to pay attention to, given this user's track record regarding other Naughty Dog projects, such as the Uncharted collection, for example. He was dead right about that. He was dead on about it. He also previously revealed the existence of Crash Bandicoot 4 ahead of its official announcement, as well as Ashley Johnson's casting in the HBO Last of Us show. So this guy has some credibility, you know. I still say this, take it with a grain of salt, but this guy definitely has credibility. So it's not really that in doubt when it comes to this leaker as opposed to other leaks. So, is it possible? Are we getting a third and possibly final entry into the Last of Us franchise? Because video games these days, they're becoming like movies, you know? Back in the old days, games would get 3, maybe 4 games, and then developers would move on. These days, however, developers are moving forward with more in the franchise, you know? Like, take Call of Duty, for example. Call of Duty is a fine example. It's been going for decades now, and we're on God knows how many Call of Duty games. I've lost track. And the same applies for things like Gran Turismo. You know, we're now on the 7th Gran Turismo game. So, you know, they keep things going, you know, so it would stand to reason that Naughty Dog are going to do the same. You know, they did the same with Uncharted. We thought Uncharted 4 was going to be the last. And then we got Lost Legacy, a 5th game in the series. And now it's also rumoured that another Uncharted game is coming after the success of the Uncharted movie. However, it will be a reboot. Probably loosely based on the movie, with Tom Holland as the video game actor. But I'm digressing. Anyway, back to the video. Now, Part 2 released all the way back in 2020. And given the game's sales figures, I would definitely fully expect Naughty Dog to entertain the idea of a follow-up. Now, in early 2021, creative director Neil Druckmann confirmed that there was already an outline story after the events of The Last of Us Part 2, but that nothing was concrete or set in stone with it just yet. Now, a year and a half later, something could have changed, and that is something big. It would no doubt take a while for another Last of Us game to release. You know, typically AAA developers release a game every 5 or 6 years or so, unless you're Rockstar Games and you release the same game every 5 years. Grand Theft Auto 5, I'm looking at you. I'm always going to make that joke. I'm sorry. When I'm coming back to this, I'm always going to make that joke. But still, my point is, AAA developers, yeah, they usually release a big game title every 5 or 6 years. And given that The Last of Us was in 2020, and we've recently had The Last of Us Part 1, technically another remastered version of the first game, it's more than likely that we probably won't see a Part 3 until 2025, 2026, quite possibly. But that's not to say it won't come sooner, you know, because there was a 7 year gap between the original game and its sequel. So don't expect The Last of Us 3 like tomorrow, as I was saying. You know, it probably won't be till 2025, 2026. But if Naughty Dog does follow a similar production schedule, it will definitely happen in that time frame. Now, the Last of Us games so far have been offered tight. You know, they've had linear levels with some exploratory options. They weren't open world, but that was the beauty of it. You know, you were restricted to this one area, but because it was so immersive, because it felt so open, you didn't really feel confined. You know, you felt like, oh, this is an open world game, even though it wasn't. But yeah, it's such a beautifully designed game, you know, with linear levels, emotive mocap performances, and the mo-capturing just really brings these characters to life. You know, it really gives us the essence of these characters as opposed to a live action story. Because in a live action story, you know, I know it's kind of the same when it comes to mocap, but in a live action story, they're being told how to react. But in a mocap story, yes, they're also being told how to react, but they have to physically show it when they've got all these bobbly bits all over their bodies and face. It's a little bit more difficult, which makes it that much more immersive, if you understand what I'm trying to say there. But yeah, it definitely, the series definitely mixes big dramatic stakes with a mix of stealth combat and gorgeously realized environments that boast a technical mastery of the PlayStation's latest console. With two games having set the mold, I don't expect a big departure in gameplay or narrative style for Part 3. I expect, even if we're not playing as Ellie or Tommy or Dinah or Abby, that someone we know from the series will be a playable character, and of course Ellie and Dinah and the rest of them will cameo, or it'll be similar to The Last of Us 2, where we'll play as the new character for a set part of the game, and then the rest of it will play as Ellie or one of the other established characters. Because at the end of The Last of Us Part 2, we just saw Ellie walking away. We don't know where she was going, we don't know what she was doing, but Dinah had left her with the baby, and Ellie was alone. You know, we don't know if she was going back to Jackson, we don't know if she was going away, we don't know what she was doing, she just walked away. So it can really go anywhere from there. But I also don't expect like an endless production line of The Last of Us game releases in the years ahead. I do strongly believe that the third is going to be the last. You know, these are stories that are intentionally told and not iterative biannual RPGs. You know, if a third Last of Us game is coming, it may well be the end, or we will be seeing the end of Ellie's story for good. She may even be the villain of the next game, and we have to kill her, which would definitely suck after seeing Joel get beaten to death with a golf club in the second game. But you see what I'm saying. But the Last of Us 2 was so dark. You know, it was so much darker than the first game. The first game was more about emotion and family, whereas the second game was just all out revenge, you know? It was just big revenge plot. That's all the second game was, but it was still beautiful. But, even if it comes with brief flashes of hope, similar to like Star Wars Empire Strikes Back, for example, which was a mid-trilogy movie that makes things a lot worse before they can actually get better. If The Last of Us Part 1 was about the lengths we go to for those we love, like I was saying, family, and Part 2 was about the hurt we inflict on those who've hurt us, like revenge story, as I was saying, The Last of Us 3 seems best placed to be about escaping that cycle of, violence and revenge and just focusing on creating something new, focusing on family and building a future away from this post-apocalyptic world that everybody's now forced to live in. Maybe it'll come back down to Ellie being the cure. Maybe now she's realized, oh, I've got nothing left in this world. I'm going to try and find some doctors, some scientists that can reverse engineer a cure from my DNA because I'm immune. Because she's been bitten twice. She was bitten in the first game, didn't turn, and she was bitten in the second game, didn't get infected. So there you go. She is definitely canonically immune. But it would also be like offering some kind of redemption or peace to the characters who remain, who have been established from the first two games. Or at least, a way forward for them, a way to move past it all. The Fireflies, for example, offer the clearest signpost of where The Last of Us 3 could go. Because in The Last of Us 2, everybody seems to think all the Fireflies are dead, that all become wolves. But Abby went off in search for surviving Fireflies. So the Fireflies are still out there. The Fireflies were a murky resistance group in the first game. They were a hollow ghost of one in the second, they'd all but been murdered or killed off or just gone. But they now seem to be rebanding with new recruits, as we saw in Abby's story. But that also offers Abby a future away from her vengeful stalker, Ellie, and memories of her lost friends. With Abby and Lev's future yet to be decided, it makes sense to follow the formation of a new Firefly community, with Ellie eventually coming across them, learning to work with a group that contains Joel's killer. Because in the end, Ellie let her live. I think in the end, even though she wanted to kill her for killing Joel, she realized that Joel wouldn't have wanted her to do this, Joel wouldn't have wanted her to go on this like revenge trip to track down his killer. He would have wanted her to be happy. He would have wanted her to go back to Jackson with Dinah and the baby and just live a happy life. So I think that's why in the end Ellie let her go. Because she had her dead to rights. Abby was strung up to a post and half dead when Ellie found her. I mean, she put up a decent fight, but she was out of it. Ellie would have easily won that fight, even though Abby did bite off some of her fingers. That'll definitely come back to bite us in the ass in the in the third game if Ellie is the protagonist. Not looking forward to that. But yeah, Ellie is still haunted by the fact that she could have helped develop a virus vaccine. And this plot point could yet rear its head in the third game, with Ellie sacrificing herself, for the good of humanity in a way. And this would bring her story with Abby full circle as well, because Abby hated Joel for killing her father, one of the doctors working on Ellie. But I think she also hated Ellie for leaving them with that sense of no hope, because they didn't get a chance to study her properly. They didn't get a chance to study what made her immune. So if in the third game they cycle back to this, then it gives them the chance to fully explore that, fully give Abby the chance to forgive Ellie for leaving in a way, even though it was Joel that took her away, but you get what I'm saying. But a game ending with a vaccination program could certainly be emotive. You know, especially with our current climate after COVID. But stretching on this a little, it might be a little bit too neat for a franchise known for twisting the knife into its players' hearts. So you know we can come right up to the point where Ellie's willing to sacrifice herself for everything. You know, she's willing to die for it, and then all of a sudden Abby just comes and shoots her in the face. You know, that would suck. You know, but it seems like that's what would happen, because the first game ended with a tearjerker, and the second game, it had so many tearjerkers. I mean, just Joel. Don't get me started. I could talk about Joel for days. You know, just wow, that death, it really got me. Now, I want to mention briefly a little bit about Lev. Lev was an interesting character. He was one of the scars that the wolves were hunting down, and the scars had like abolished all of the old world stuff, and they just lived off the land. So the protagonist will be a key to where the story goes, and The Last of Us already has a reputation for swapping up your avatar between Joel and Ellie in the first game, and then Ellie and Abby in the second. We were left to the latter of two characters, breathless after a near-fatal encounter on the beach with Abby and a young cult escapee Lev leaving in a boat, while Ellie seemingly abandons her revenge at the last moment, as I was saying, because she probably felt like it's something that Joel wouldn't have wanted her to do. But I think this is a clear indicator of where the next game will go, either following Abby or Lev as a new playable character in her new Firefly platoon. Now, much of The Last of Us 2's impact was in its ability to swap viewpoints, to see you inhabit the rage, hurt, and revenge of opposing forces. We can't imagine Ellie being absent from the next game. She'll almost certainly be the face of the next game. If not, Abby will be. And, you know, I think one of these two characters will take up a huge chunk of the game's playtime. But it seems likely that The Last of Us 3 will also find a way to pivot into someone else's shoes. You know, because we've seen it in the other games. And it'd be incredible to see a trans mask character, sort of, so to speak, put center stage in this way. Now, with Part 2 having been review bombed on Metacritic at one stage by players hating on a conspicuously muscular woman, oh dear, yeah, wow, it's a muscular woman. So what? She's an empowering woman. I thought she looked damn fine, to be honest. I hated her character because of what she did, but I thought she looked damn fine. That's just me personally. But yeah, we certainly hope that Naughty Dog will hold its nerve with the kind of representation it's offered so far, because as I recall, Lev was also a trans character. He's a trans character. But the main change we're after is less about the game's characters and more about the people making them. Naughty Dog got a lot of bad press around The Last of Us 2's release due to crunch culture that saw devs working 12-hour days. There's also been plenty of noise from Drunkman about improving this in future titles at the studio, just even if it's away from The Last of Us. And I personally do hope to see that implemented in concrete ways if Part 3 comes to pass. But early reports from devs that were working on the Part 1 remake on the PS5 certainly point to a brighter, healthier environment for studio staff. Anyway, Regardless, given the gut punches of the last games and heart-wrenching moments of the last games, I could certainly use a few more years to recover before we inflict that on ourselves again, you know? In the meantime, with The Last of Us TV show landing this month, and The Last of Us Part 1 coming to PC in March, there's plenty of opportunity to dive into this impactful franchise in the months ahead. So then, that is it. That is all I could find. I hope you enjoyed the video. So please stay tuned. There is a lot coming from me this year. There is so much this year. We have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order that is free on the PlayStation Plus this month. If you have a PlayStation, I recommend downloading it. It's the PS4 and PS5 version, so it is definitely worth downloading. February, we have the magnificently beautiful looking Hogwarts Legacy. Obviously, I'm getting that. Obviously, I'll be live streaming that and doing videos on that. We have the Horizon Forbidden West DLC also coming in February. We have Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, Spider-Man 2 coming later this year. There's the Star Wars Fallen Order sequel. If I like the first one, I'll definitely get the sequel. There's Star Trek Resurgence coming out this year. That's more personally for me because I like Star Trek, but yeah. There's a lot coming this year, you know. We can expect a lot, you know. It's a big year for gaming. It's the biggest year for next-gen gaming since the next-gen systems came out. You know, COVID put a halt on a lot of games coming out, and in a way it was a good thing because it gives devs more of a chance to expand upon these games. But anyway, yeah, that's it for the video. Thank you all once again for stopping by. Do appreciate it. And of course, y'all know the routine. If you are new to the channel and enjoyed this video, please make sure you smash that like button and drop me a subscribe, because it would just be your good deed of the day. Same applies if you are a returning viewer. So yeah, that being said then, this has been Gamer Dude. Happy gaming, and I will catch y'all in the next one, guys.